Hello, buddy. This is Robert Hollis, another edition of Unlimited Wisdom. Today, I have a very dear friend. I was trying to figure out today that I've almost known this guy for like 30 years, if you can imagine that. And my great friend and brother in the Lord, Jeff Carlisle. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Great. So what have you been up to lately?
Lately, it's been interesting. It's been quite a journey. I had started a consulting company, so I had been advising the owners of companies, both in and out of the network marketing space, mostly on strategy, marketing, all those types of things,
Very
mostly
cool.
strategy and how to grow the business. And then I kind of segued into coaching. Um, I coached literally thousands and thousands of people, both in and out of the space,
Sure.
entrepreneurs. And then that kind of segue into coaching programs that were all kind of based in spirituality and quantum physics and how to help people shift. So I've been all focused on different ways to use my gifts to be able to help as many people as possible.
Well, God bless you forever, Jeff. We know there's a large group of people out there that that need that. You know what I mean? I know I need it. I still think to this day, um, if I never found someone that already knew what the hell they're doing, you know what I mean? Because I always hear about a bunch of people in, virtually affiliate space or network marketing space or just being entrepreneurs. I mean, the data is out there that, 5% of companies make it after 5 years. And then 5 years after that, only 1% of the five actually pull a profit. And so I just don't understand why people, I look at it as a divine thing that happened where I meet this guy that has years of documentation, was trained by some very successful people. And all I did is follow in directions. I believed in what he said. And so when I see so many people nowadays, so in the world of entrepreneurs, 95.5 that don't make it. And then you look at industries like affiliate marketing and network marketing, the numbers are the same. And what have you found through your experience? So I think that a lot of people would like to know that.
Well, to your point, having somebody who has already been there can definitely cut a learning curve down tremendously.
Right.
And it could also make the difference in those key moments. We all, in each journey that we all go on, we all hit those moments of challenge where our eyes tell us that it's not working. Our brain tells us it may not work. We start to go into self-questioning, self-judgment, possibly fear. So as you know, being as successful as you are, we all come across those moments in anything we're doing.
Sure.
Having a mentor or having somebody who's not only giving you a blueprint to follow, that's a huge part of it, but also having the support of that person who believes in you is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Those are huge components, but at the end of the day, and I'm talking individually, then I'll get to companies. At the end of
Sure.
the day, you became massively successful because of what was in you. You may have had a blueprint from a mentor, you had someone who believed in you, but it still came down to you. It still came down to your desire, the beliefs that you held, even if they were, affected by the person who believed in you,
Right.
your patterns, your emotional patterns, your intention, your imagination, as you know so well, the actions you decided to take, all of those variables lined up. And so even if you have somebody who's, they're giving you a blueprint
Right.
and believing in you, there's still going to be those moments of truth where you have to get in touch with what's in you. We all have an amazing power within us that comes through us, and it's getting in touch with that and aligning with that in a certain way to like push us past our identity, push us past who we think we are and what we think is possible for ourselves in our lives. And as far as companies, it's kind of the same thing, just in a collective.
Sure.
The leadership sets that tone. They have to have the blueprint, they have to like support the people, And then you have all these individuals going down that same journey that ideally the leadership has to coalesce and get all moving in the same belief system, the same direction, the same values and everything else,
Right.
to cross those hurdles, because every single company is going to hit those hurdles. And a lot of that with corporate, I've seen companies that hit the timing perfectly because of the timing that they released products or they promoted certain
Right.
things, and others who didn't hit the timing properly, but yet the structure and the foundation of what we're discussing was so strong
Right.
that even though the timing may not have been great or the market conditions changed, that foundation was so strong, and people felt that they were part of something bigger than just themselves, that
So important.
it carried the company through.
Yeah, it's so important. In my years of watching all successful companies, it's amazing when you can tell the visionary or the imaginary person that created it. You can immediately find out if that person was just doing it for money, they seen an opportunity, or if the vision itself has taken, the leaders within that company and they look at it so long term. You know what I mean? I seen a recent post by somebody that said, how long have you been in your company? And I was really blown away that there was a sense of pride in those that had been with a company for 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, 12 years, 20 years. I mean, when someone posts that in this industry that we're in, and they said, I've been with the same company for 40 years, you could tell there was some pride and ego in saying, I bought into the vision, I'm still locked into the vision, and I'm here long term. And then, of course, the people don't want to say that, I've been with this company for 2 months and this is my 14th company this year.
Right. Right.
So I always thought it was interesting that, it's sort of like relationships, right? It's like all of a sudden you find an individual that says, I've been married a couple of times and divorced a couple of times, and I've been through 5 bad relationships. And they never ever wonder what the common denominator is, because the common denominator is them, right? So you doing, coaching and, literally tens of thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands, because I know some of the groups that you worked with. What have you found that you try to instill in somebody and they just never ever get it? What do you think that is more than anything?
Yeah, I was going to say that's a long list.
Yeah,
I would say the number one thing would be for somebody to have, it's kind of a dual, both
yeah.
sides of the same coin.
Explain.
On one side of it is they have to have a core belief. And
Yes.
even if they don't believe in themselves, they have to believe at some point that it's possible for them. And as you know, because you're so good at it, when you work with people, if you have someone supporting you and instilling that belief, that helps.
Right.
But at the end of the day, foundationally, it's the belief that it's possible, where they can actually see themselves having some level of success, because the beliefs kind of work like an invisible prison that keep us locked in a certain experience, a certain reality.
Great
So
point.
until you break through those beliefs, or the confinement of the beliefs that have been formed early on in childhood and then reinforced through patterns, right?
Right.
Until you can break that, you're pretty much stuck there. And
Yeah.
however you break it. So that's one part. The other part of it is, and I alluded to it earlier, is people, when they go out to do anything, it doesn't matter the industry, the perception that they hold, or the observation that they hold over what's happening. That's why you could have a car accident and you could have 6 witnesses telling you 6 different stories of what happened, and they all absolutely had that experience, because they through their own patterns of perception, they observe it the way they observe it.
Right.
MIT did a study not too long ago where they realized that out of all the senses, the main 5 senses, that 80% of how we perceive is based on sight. But then they took that 80% and they looked at that segment, and 80% of that, or 80% of the way you perceive through sight, is based on past experiences. It actually shapes what we think we're seeing and what we think we're experiencing. And so if in your past, if you haven't made the shifts that you need to make from your past identity, from your past belief system, your thought patterns and everything else, then you could literally walk in a room as an individual, and out of 100 people, you're going to end up gravitating towards and talking to the one that will possibly help support and get you to the place that you believe you could get to, where Robert will walk into a room and just kind of gravitate over to the other side of the room and end up meeting the person that's going to make him more millions of dollars, right? It's like those two are the same thing intertwined. And the biggest challenge, I think, for people is that their eyes see things a certain way. And then it, we perceive, we observe, and then it goes into our brain, it releases the chemicals, but they don't realize the brain's a prediction engine. It looks for evidence of what it believes to be true. So we could see something unfolding, and one person could look at it and say, this isn't working, it's falling apart, it's not going to happen.
Right.
And another person could say, oh, wow, this is interesting, it's unfolding, I wonder where it's taking me, because obviously this is leading me to the solution, right? So it's a matter of perspective tied into that belief system. And then obviously, those two either help break you free from the programming that you've come into, with over the years, or keep you stuck in it.
Wow. I that was deep stuff, Jeff. I mean, honestly, that was really, really good stuff. And so my audience knows a little more about Jeff. This is not the only industry. I know that you've gone from, being in sales right out of college to real estate, and then real estate into what I just call marketing. I really get upset sometimes when people, again, frame something based on a word. You know what I mean? So if they call it network marketing or direct sales or whatever they want to call it, to me, marketing is very simply taking a product and service from someone that created it to people that want to purchase it. Right. And so, marketing is marketing. Why there's so many definitions of a word, and then somebody looks at it and says, I heard that's bad, and I was probably that person as well, through just the concept that everything was hard work. So when I met people that were making, more than I made in a year and a month, my mind equated that, well, of course they went to college. They're way smarter than me. And on top of that, someone gave them money to launch their company. And then another one, of course, is, you got to be a people person. And then another one is, just on and on of why something works for somebody else, but it'll never work for me.
Right.
It'll never work for me. And so that one was, because of work ethic, growing up in the Midwest like you, it was like if someone's making that much more money than me, then they really don't have a life. You know what I mean? It means that they're working 10 times harder than me. And so they got nothing for their spiritual, they have nothing for a family, they have nothing for children. It's like, I'm not going to work that hard. So that's when, these things come up where if it's too good to be true, it probably is, right?
Right.
And, money doesn't buy happiness, family's more important. And so, with you dealing with a bunch of people, have you found some common denominators of being able to coach this many people, where it's this one thing that would be the best thing that you could do for their limiting belief?
That's a great question. You touched on my background a little bit. I'm going to lead into the answer with just kind of the different variations of experience that I've had, because it's relevant to the answer.
Right.
So in college, I found myself in need of, money that I didn't plan on needing. And there was only so many jobs in this small college town, and I was washing dishes, but that wasn't going to make it enough, right?
Right.
So I went, a friend of mine said, listen, there's this company, been around a long time, 100 years, and a lot of very successful people went through it, and they have, an opening or whatever. And it turned out to be door-to-door sales. And so, the summer of my first year in college, I went out, I was in Cincinnati and then the southeastern part of Indiana, selling, different books, which had great value, children's
Right.
books, and some of them were Bibles and different stuff. But that was probably where I had really, really, had a mirror put up to myself in a very profound way. 14 hours a day, every door I hit was a mirror, right? Every door I knocked was a mirror, and how people perceive me, and how they
Right.
reacted and stuff like that. And so that I had that piece. And then when I moved out to California, I worked 3 jobs, morning, noon, afternoon, and night. And then I got a kind of a corporate job, which was very, very good training. But I kind of did well in that. I started as just a sales rep that was supposed to take calls, and I ended up creating more sales in a whole different industry than I never thought of, because I just believed it was possible, and the 75-year-old company never thought of it. And
I
so here
always
I was.
tell I always tell people all the time, we hear about these people that all of a sudden it seems like they just get it, they're natural. And I always tell people they just didn't get the memo that you got.
Right.
And that memo is it's not possible. We don't do those things. I think that
Right.
I think it was an admiral that said the most dangerous statement in the world is this is the way things have always been done.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And so, you come in and no one said, hey, these things you don't go to.
Right.
So please finish. I always think that's
Yeah. So very quickly, I figured out that even if I generated millions of dollars of new sales, I was going to get a pat on the back and a tiny raise. So I went into real estate. Um, and I'm going to touch on one example. I was brand new, didn't know what I was doing. And I had called on a house that had not been sold, had previously been listed with several agents. And I went over and met the owner, and the house was not ready to show. I mean, it had so much clutter, and it had some things that it just had a lot of work to be done. But I believed that I could sell it. And so she signed up with me. I didn't even know how to fill out the contract.
wow.
Um, and but I was for sure going to sell that house. I got a
How
random,
hard can this be?
yeah, and I offered a few days later. The sales calls were coming, or the questions were coming in the front desk of the real estate office, and the person wanted to go to lunch, and so I said, I'll cover. And so a call came in, and it was someone saying, hey, I want to look at this listing over in Canoga Park. And so I gave the information on that listing. I said, well, why are I just asked, why are you looking? Oh, I'm an investor and I'm looking for a rental property. And I said, I have a great property for you, right? And I started telling them about this amazing property, because I knew it could be amazing if it was cleaned out and cleaned up and all this stuff. And he said, great. I think it was Thursday afternoon. He said, great. How about Saturday morning? I said, great. Right. And I gave him the address. So I literally had to go over there on Friday and say, listen, we're cleaning like crazy and we're doing everything.
Right.
And so we were like cleaning, throwing stuff out. We were up till like 3:30 in the morning, Friday morning, Saturday morning, Friday night, throwing stuff in the garage, getting everything, scrubbing floors. I was in there scrubbing bathrooms. We were peeling wallpaper. It was amazing. He came in the next day and said, yeah, let's do it. Took him to the office to write the offer. So I was selling both sides. And again, didn't know how to fill out a sales contract. So I had to, excuse myself, go out and ask someone how to fill it out. But that was my first sale. Then right after that, And again, I know this is a really long answer, but it's
No,
leading to something really important.
I know it does.
Right after that, I got a phone call from a friend, and I was up in the valley in Los Angeles, in Northridge at the office, and I got a call from a friend that said, hey, my cousins want to buy a house in Torrance. Well, for everyone who does not know, that's about 45 minutes with no traffic.
No traffic.
South. And back in that time, if you didn't belong to the multiple listing system, if you didn't belong to a particular board of realtors area down in Torrance, you couldn't access those houses. And so I went to my manager and I said, hey, I got a referral for Torrance. I'm going to go sell them a condo. And he said, you can't do that. And I said, why not? Now I'm like a couple weeks in, right? And he said, because you don't belong to the MLS and you won't even be, you don't have a key card and you won't be able to do it. I said, yeah, I can. He goes, no, you can't. I said, okay. So I literally cold called, I think it was the Coldwell Banker agent at the time. And I said, listen, here's my situation. I'm up in the valley. Do you have anyone in the valley that can help get you information when you need it? And the agent was like, no. And I said, you do now. Anything you need in the valley, right? Just call me, whatever. So I said, can you do me a favor? Sure. This is back in the day. Can you fax me all the properties that are in this area that match this criteria? Sure. Right. I said, anything you need, just let me know. Here's my number, whatever. So I get the fax, and there was like 4 that were vacant, but there was 6 that had owners in them. Thank goodness. Right. Because I didn't have a key card.
Right.
So to get in the house. So I called the owners, set up appointments for the following Saturday, and I just back-to-back them. I hadn't even seen, which is not what I recommend, but I hadn't even seen the properties first. I hadn't previewed them, but I took them in, showed them, they liked one, they wrote an offer, sold it.
Wow.
Put it on the board, right? And the manager everyone was just staring at it because that didn't happen. You don't sell in other area. And so all of a sudden I had these 2 sales on the board my first couple of weeks, and everyone's just like not knowing what happened, right?
Right.
So after I got burned out, that's one example of real estate. I got plenty of those, but after I got burned out from real estate, I went into marketing. I just wanted to build residual income, no experience, no real knowledge or anyone to show me how to do it because of how things fell. And just through that same level of, this is possible. I knew it was possible. I mean, I came in, I think there was 10,000 people already involved when I came in. And I was just like, what they're doing, and this was a key point, what they're doing doesn't matter. I didn't compare myself. It was just, it's what I can do. Right. So that went very well. I ended up building that pretty substantially and sold that. And then same thing with, every other aspect of every other thing I've done. I did not listen necessarily very well to people who told me that I couldn't do something or something wasn't possible.
Didn't it sort of, when people tell you that you can't do something, isn't it sort of like, watch me?
Yeah, back then it was definitely watch me. I've matured a little bit since then, but
yeah, you don't have to say it, but they still have to experience you doing it.
Absolutely. But so every industry I had lived in Europe as a principal in a commodity. I started a commodity business. My consulting, my coaching, I didn't have any experience in any of those. I've been involved in online marketing since 2000. Did a lot of things in online marketing. And so with all that said, I didn't have any background, and I really didn't have any business mentors in those, which is how I learned this. But to the question of, what's kind of the most important thing in coaching people, it's really expanding their belief of what's possible and how they see themselves in the world.
Yes.
That I know I said that previously, but that's really the answer. It's really expanding the possibility in their minds and getting them past the bubble, their reality bubble that they've lived in, And one of the key components is really helping them identify who they are, not as the identity that was created from childhood, but who they really are, their gifts, and what's possible for them in their being their true self, because that's a whole different animal. You know,
It is.
you're limited by your identity. Both of us, you know, if we were to go off our old identity, it would have been a different outcome, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But getting the person to step out of the reality they've been in and the patterns they've been in long enough to see something. And the perfect example that encapsulates this, remember Indiana Jones, where they were going after the Holy Grail?
Of course.
And Sean Connery was the father. And he had the little book, and you know, that they shot Sean Connery to force the issue, like to save his dad. Now he had to go forward because he didn't want to do it.
Right.
So in the book, you know, first it was a penitent man shall pass. And so he's like, a penitent man is a humble man. And so he kneels, right? So the first lesson was humility. And then the second one was the name of God, right? And it told him the path that he had to step on. Well, so the second lesson was, you know, your connection and your understanding, your relationship with God. Because if he didn't have the knowledge of God's true name in that little movie clip, he would have fallen and died, right?
He would have
And
missed the
then he
rock.
comes, right. And then he comes to the gauntlet and he looks down and there's a crevasse that goes to, you know, forever. And he's looking at a span that there's no way he could jump, but he sees the door on the other side to get to the Holy Grail, right? And so
this is all while his father is dying.
And he's got moments and they're yelling, Indy, hurry, right? And so he opens the book and he sees a diagram of what looks like someone walking on air. And then he figures out it's a leap of faith. And when he figures out it's a leap of faith, he's like, oh, you know, first he's like, nobody could do this. Nobody could jump this.
Right.
And then they're yelling, hurry. And so he realizes he's going to have to ignore what his eyes tell him, which is sheer death, right? If he steps out, and he puts his hand on his heart and he takes a step. And as soon as he takes a step, they show him what looks like he's standing in midair. And he looks and he realizes the bridge that goes across is mirrored.
Yeah.
And so from his perspective, standing where he was, he couldn't see that it was a bridge. It looked like emptiness.
Right.
But when he changed his perspective from a leap of faith, taking a step of faith, and he changed his perspective just a little bit, he could see the bridge was already there. And that's how it works. Because there's solutions, there's bridges to get us from where we are to the outcomes we want. But based on that programming and our old identity and everything we talked about, we can't see it. But if you just are able to shift just enough, you'll see the bridge.
Great. I love that. I love that. You know, one time we all go to these giant conferences where, you know, it's the people that a lot of people want to meet. I remember going to it, and I think George Bush was there and Schwarzkopf was there, and, you know, people that have won gold medals. It was, you know, one of these just crazy things, right? And I remember one of the wildest things is the person that put on the event after he did that. He just came out, Peter Lowe, I don't know, this was way back in the day. Yep. And he came out and he said this little statement that I was thinking was powerful. And he goes, you know, all I ever wanted to do is one day say that I spoke on stage with, and you fill in the name. And he said, I didn't realize that these people accept money to speak at events. And he said, so I found out what these speakers wanted to be paid. Step 2 is I found a place that they could all come to. And then 3, I needed to know how many tickets I needed to sell to make this an event that wouldn't break me. And I just went, wow. And then he goes, so here's the deal. If during this whole seminar, if you wasn't nudging somebody next to you and saying, if that person can do that, I can do that. He said,
Right.
then I still know you got value, but when you get up tomorrow morning on Monday, it's going to be the same day it was last Friday.
Yep.
And so that one thing that tells you, I can do this. And I think what always ends up being so weird, Jeff, is that I always run into people and they always think of the end. Like me, when I got involved in anything, and I want to see if you feel the same way. I always looked at the top person. I said I could do it, but I also set my imagination and my vision towards something that could just get me to the next step. So
Right.
when I met somebody that made 62 grand a month, I normally tell these stories to people and they go, I don't need that kind of money. I'm not interested. I don't want to do that. And I said, yeah, but when I met him, I went, I'm making, about $3,800 take home as a mechanic. I've always wanted to make, 72,000. Why? I don't know. This is in the 80s and I just thought, man, if I could make 72,000 a year. So I looked at this guy and went, I know in my heart of hearts that I can pick up 10% of what he's doing. And so I always find it interesting that people have a really blockage with, well, I'm never going to be that guy. No, you should be you. It's like, so, I know that you looked at people and felt the same way. If there's other people that are doing this, I will figure it out. And then the
Absolutely.
second part is, if I make more than I did last year, that should be okay for now. I'll get better.
Right.
I'll get gooder. So talk to people about that because I think that's always been like people immediately go, well, I could never be you. You shouldn't be.
Right. It's not about that. Great point. And it's really interesting. I want to bring it back to when I met you, right? You had all this in great reputation, you had all this experience, you had had success, you had had all these things when I met you, right? And
Right.
you were so fun because you were so nonchalant and you were always cracking jokes and you're always kind of goofing around. And if you remember, I was so serious. I was like so serious. I barely, would crack a smile. It's like I was so driven. I was ready to
Yeah.
walk through a brick wall. And that was a perfect example for me to, that I didn't have to be a certain way that I thought I had to be
Right.
in order to be successful. Right. So that
So
was
important. So
yeah,
important.
one key part.
Yeah.
And I remember, you were always just having a good time and having fun and interested in people and all these things. And at the time, I was so intense that, I was just like this, right?
Just let me know what I got to do, and I'm going to do more of it than anybody.
Right, exactly. And
Yeah.
so that was kind of a key little part for me. Just, it wasn't as much like, well, if he can do it, I can do it in that sense. It was laying the foundation for, I don't have to necessarily be who I think I have to be to make someone else either accept me, respond to me, or to be successful.
Right.
Right? Because that's what I thought. I thought I had to be, and then you were just being you. And I was like, wow, I can just kind of chill out here and be me a little bit more and still have that success. So that was one key part. The other
Cool.
key part, which was really, really this is going to be deep, but it
No.
really it hits the thing on the head. Our parents are probably the most impactful early on with their beliefs, their thinking, the way they see the world, everything else. And I'm going to tell two parts to this. So when I was very young, it was in the early 70s, my dad was working with someone else in a construction business.
Okay.
And we lived in a modest suburban house, we were doing okay. We went to private Christian schools, and so things were fine. But I remember the first experience I had with money was my dad brought home a check. This is circa 1971, 72. He brought home a check for like $55,000, a single check as his bonus. Now, I didn't know what that meant.
Sure.
It was kind of a big deal because all of a sudden we're all taking pictures with my dad holding the check.
Right.
And so at a young age, I was like, okay, something about this is really, really important. Right. And then next thing you know, we got new clothes, new station wagon, remodeled the whole basement, right? Like fancy shag carpet and,
man,
all the stuff. You remember the Partridge Family shirts and with like silk shirts and, early 70s. Exactly. And so it was like the imprint that gave me was a very positive one. And it gave my brothers and my sister, because we saw my dad go to work. He'd come home, he'd eat dinner, he'd work a little bit at night. He'd get this big check. And then we got to go to Kansas City, to Worlds of Fun. We got to do all this great stuff, and our lives improved and everyone seemed happier.
Got it.
Right. So that was my first imprint on money.
Right.
Well, flash forward, I get out of college. I'm getting ready to move to California and I needed a car. I was working 2 jobs, day and night. And my dad at the time had a lot of success. He and my mom were divorced at the time, but he had a lot of success with his construction. And he lived in a beautiful custom built house that he built up on a lake on like 5 acres. He had a barn next to it with a training facility for his Arabian show horses, right? Like he wasn't hurting.
Right.
You had to drive down this long, like 400-yard driveway just to get to his house, because we used to drive golf balls to see if we can get over the, So I pull up in this $4,000 car that I was very proud that I bought with my hard-earned money, right?
Yeah.
In good shape. I got a good deal and it was in good shape. And I pull up in it and I'm going down this driveway and he's outside and the horses are running free, and I'm coming up to this big house and he goes, he's like, roll down the window. So I go, what's up? He goes, whose car is this? I said, it's mine. And he said, you had to get the fancy one, didn't you? And I said, well, it was only $4,000. It's I got a good deal and it's in good shape and I need something to go to California. He said, just remember, nobody likes people with money. And,
wow.
and I was like, okay. And I rolled up the window and I remember shaking my head going, what is all this? Right? Like you have hundreds of thousands in horses, you have this house on this lake. And at the time, I just shaked it off because I thought, it didn't resonate with me. A couple years later, I'm in California. I had a little mental exercise that came to me and I tried it. It came to me kind of like an idea and I tried it from something I heard. I did a derivative of it. And as I was doing it, it was basically, I was coming into where 6 figures or $100,000 was a lot of money. Back then it was, still is. But for me, it was like, I might as well win lotto if I made 100,000 back. Because my mom didn't have money and we didn't come from, my dad had money, my mom didn't.
Right.
She had 4 kids. So, I was going through this exercise and I was like, envisioning and imagining making $100,000. And it was just like this big thing. And as I went through the exercise, one of the things that came up for me is like, if I made $100,000, then people wouldn't like me. And I remember going, wait a minute, I'm generous. I care. Like I'm very, if I made $100,000, I'd be twice as generous because I have twice the money. Right.
Right.
And so it didn't compute. And so I was kind of thinking back, like, what is that? What is that? And so then I realized it was from my dad.
Wow. Huge.
And so I called him up and I said, do you remember when I pulled up in my car and do you remember what you said? And he goes, no. And I said, you don't remember what you said? He goes, no. And I said, you said something to the effect of, you know, that, I had to get the fancy one. He goes, okay, I probably said that, And I said, do you remember what else you said? He goes, not really. And I said, you said, just remember, nobody likes people with money. He goes, well, I didn't say that. And
Oh my
I
God.
believe me, you said that, because that was like a defining moment for me, because I had a disconnect with your lifestyle and
Right.
how hard you worked and what I thought was okay to make money. And I go, that really affected me. And the reason I'm calling you is because I just realized how much that affects me. And then I said, let me ask you a question. I said, with grandpa, your father, I go, did he give you a car? He goes, no. He goes, he gave my brother one. I had to buy my own. And I said, what kind of model did you get? And he goes, well, I got this.
Yeah.
And I said, do you remember when you showed it to your dad? He goes, oh yeah, I remember that. And I said, what happened? Well, he gave me a hard time because he thought it was too expensive.
Wow.
And I go, really? And he hadn't put two and two together,
No.
my dad. And I said, really? I go, did he say anything else? He said, yeah. He said, remember, nobody likes a show off. And I was, yeah. And I was like, do you realize that's what you had said to me? He goes, I didn't say that. I go, well, it's a different words, but it's the same message.
Right.
Like, you had to get the fancy one, you had to get the expensive one, and no one likes people with money. Nobody likes people who show off. I go, it's the same thing.
Yep.
He goes, oh, I never really realized that. I never thought about that, And I was like, wow. Right. And so what I have learned and what I realized in the course of not only seeing possibility for ourselves by others' success and seeing if they can do it, we can do it, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing that from a place of non-comparison, where you're, because when you start comparing yourself, you go into self-judgment, and then you go into fear that you're not going to be enough, and all that old stuff gets triggered that we all carry.
Yeah.
But it's so important to see that it's possible, even if you're seeing it in someone else. But then as we go through life, we have these things, these experiences, these events that we don't think are impactful, or they may seem like they're innocuous, but they're really important. And here's the key. I wanted my dad's love more than anything. So to me, in my unconscious, I processed and I interpreted as, if you go out and make a lot of money, I'm not going to like you.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
But here he was with money, but I realized that unconsciously I was keeping myself stuck at a certain level because the need for approval and love from my father was imprinted on me to not make too much money.
Got it.
As soon as I figured that out, part-time in real estate, that first year I made 134,000, and it went up from there.
Right.
So it's a combination of, seeing what's possible, and definitely that whole aspect of only you being you with your unique personality, your unique gifts. I mean, nobody has the same combination of experience, consciousness, personality, gifts as Robert Hollis does. You're the only one on the planet that has your unique combination. I'm the only one that has my unique combination of gifts and experiences and knowledge and perception. And each person listening, you're the only one that has that unique combination. And the sooner you can tap into that, and not your identity that was given to you by your parents, but really start to embrace that and use that, bring that forward. That's one piece of the puzzle that is huge. And then the other piece is all of these things that have imprinted, that have impacted us, that we don't even remember, just like my dad didn't remember.
Right.
And maybe in our unconscious that we're, holding ourselves back in certain ways, or we might justify, oh, I don't need that much money. I don't want to work that hard. Well, nobody said you had to work that hard. You don't even, you're saying no to something before even know what may be required.
Right.
And I'll make one other point on that. I was coaching a group in a company, like 20 of their top producers. And one of the guys that came through, and these were all been in the industry a long time, and they were all making great money except for like two. And one of the guys who came through had been in the industry over 20 years and never hit success.
Wow.
And kudos to him. He was still believing and still going, but he had always struggled financially after 20 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was just blown away by his tenacity and his resolve that he was gonna figure it out. And he went through one of my programs, my coaching I did with these 20, and he had a definite shift, but I didn't know exactly. I had a theory on what the shift was, but he didn't tell anyone. But he had a shift. We finished the program. Production went up. The company, because of those 20 primarily, plus others, but the company was stuck at 80 million for 9 years. Within 2 years, it went to 200 million, and mostly because of these 20, right?
Yeah.
He ended up becoming the fastest growing person and the highest money earner. He did 1.3 million the following 14 months. He did over 2 million the year after. And he contacted me out of the blue. Now, someone said that he was talking about me on stage in Dallas, and he was referencing what he had done.
Nothing better.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, he's doing well. And I had no idea how well, right? And they said, yeah, he just did over $1 million. And I said, good for him, and I hadn't talked to him, and he reached out to me, booked a time to talk with me. And I said, well, hey, congratulations. I heard, and now he's building houses for homeless. I mean, he's doing all kinds of great things with the money. And I said, I'm just curious, what was the shift that you had? Because I know you had a big shift. And he said, it was my belief. He goes, it was my belief that I could build the business the way that I personally could do it, and not the way someone else did it.
Yes.
And he said, and that made all the difference. He goes, you know what happened to me? And I said, no. He goes, I got a random message on Facebook from someone I never met before who said they had been following me out of the blue after doing your program. And they said, I want to get involved. Well, that person happened to be a top producer previously in another company. They came in, and all of a sudden my income's exploding, and It's continuing to explode. And so my point of it is that it was the combination of him having a shift that he didn't have to be someone else, right?
Right.
He believed that he didn't have to build it and go through necessarily what maybe someone else's path was.
Amen.
And he believed that it could happen for him finally after 20 years. He didn't know how it was going to happen.
Right.
That combination where he got kind of unlocked in those areas, all of a sudden it opened up for him, and he blew the lid off. And that's not the only story, of course.
Sure.
But it's these components. But to your point, him discovering that he didn't have to be someone else or do it the way they do it. And Robert, you're probably the best example of that in the world, because how you do things, and with your hitting on the imaginator and all of that, I mean, you're hitting on some very critical stuff that is fundamental to how everything works and how people can be successful, and how you've done it, because you haven't done it. Like, I know the way that I was trying to do it back when I was so intense, and you weren't doing it that way. You were doing it the Robert Hollis way, which was you were being you, but you were creating things and making things happen because you were in touch with who you were and because of all the things And so I think that's the bottom line is, we have these things that affect us, but to your point, we can remove those things very quickly. Like,
absolutely.
At the core is being who you really are.
It is the key. It is totally the key. I always think that it's so funny that people try to be somebody else that they admire, not knowing, not knowing that they can achieve that same success by learning who they are and knowing that they can attract a certain audience for that. And I always love this phrase from Albert Einstein, and he goes, "You can't take the mentality and the beliefs and the core that you have and get yourself out of that using the same thoughts,
Yep.
using the same loop." Because most people that you and I've met, and we continue, people won't, Jeff and I have probably, no exaggeration, since we reconnected, it probably had like maybe 10 or 20 hours worth of conversation, because it's fun to run into someone that can help other people. And that's the reason for him being on my podcast. There's not a doubt in my mind that there's a group of people that will watch this and immediately might not see my style, but immediately would resonate with Jeff. And I'm not the kind of person that has an ego that I wish I could figure out what Jeff knows so then I could just steal it and use it.
You don't
No.
need
Yeah,
to.
yeah. When finding the right people, like, because Jeff's style is different and it's unique, and he's gone through different experiences, and Jeff's like one of those people like with the Midas touch, and he believes it. You know what I mean? Is that this is the industry, or this is the world that I want to go in, and I'm going to be the best that I can be each and every day at that. And so, it's very, very difficult for people that don't have experience in going through, wow, I did above average at this, I did above average at this, I did above average at this. And when people hear my whole story, they go, I remember Mike and Tony, you and I know them, worked with them. But they used to say all the time is, all of a sudden I would get them around the racing industry. And I'll never forget, I took them to the Detroit Grand Prix, right? And I walked up to this big giant trailer, and my first mentor, Roger Penske, seen me and immediately left the conversation that he was coming and came right over to me. And he said, "Are you looking for a job?" And I went, "No, that's in a different life." And he goes, "I'd hire you again right now." And so, it's neat because I just consistently know that I don't know. And you and I had that conversation. And when you realize that you don't know, that you don't know, then talking to other people that can just step aside, that have no bias whatsoever, and just through your speech and just through your actions and the way that you talk, they have a connection that allows them to be able to find your loop, to find your limiting belief, to figure out how to switch and reframe, give you new paradigms, new perspectives. And when you get to do that for a lot of people, that's when you're saying things like you did with this person, that they knew what it was. You didn't need to know what it was. You know,
Right.
you were able to go click, click, and they went, "Oh my God, I can do this." And so I try to always tell people, what is that worth? What the hell is worth you getting rid of your limiting beliefs and falling in love with yourself, knowing that you're going to allow people that need to hear your voice to come to you? Wow. So, yeah, so Jeff's not only been extremely successful, or I wouldn't have him on here, but one of the things that I think is unique is that, I've always watched Jeff to consistently go, all right, I'm going to do this. And then, this ain't doing it. I'm doing this. And I just find it interesting that, when I look at professional athletes and actors and singers and people that, from the world view, are at the highest of their pinnacle. And they, oh my God, if I had this person's lifestyle. And then you hear them totally reinvent their lives. It's like, I ain't doing that anymore. Got the trophies, got the t-shirt. Now it's time to do something different.
Right.
And those people all I always admire. I just so I think one of the last questions I have for you is when people interview you, Jeff, and you've got a lot of people that have interviewed you, what is one question that after you do an interview with people, you go, I can't believe this person didn't ask me this?
That's a great question. I've never been asked that question. What's the question that I can't believe?
Or you wished. So while they're interviewing, you go,
Yeah,
God, I wish they would ask this because this is what I'm passionate about. This is the thing that I know the most of, I'm most confident about. I wish they would ask me this question.
well, those are two different questions. I'll answer both of them, right?
Good, good.
So the one that if I was to say I can't believe they didn't ask me this, it would be so, and I appreciate you saying nice things. And
You deserve
as
them.
as you know, I've gone into different industries, and I just felt compelled to go into them, and had success in each of the industries I went in. Um, some would say more than average success. And the question that, I would ask me, but I don't get asked is, is why, first, why did you leave at the top of this industry and start another one? Why, you're at the top of the real estate game. Why did you leave and go into marketing? Then you had massive, momentum and success, and why did you move? And what on earth gave you the, idea or the thought that you could do it?
Right.
Right. That would be the first one.
Yeah.
And then the second one would be, well, how did it
Well, what is
happen?
the answer to that?
So the first one is back to your incredible point about finding out who you are and then moving from that place, not trying to be something else that you're not, or trying to be someone else, or trying to be like someone else,
Right.
but really being who you are. And you've been the perfect example of that through all the different successes you've had, and what's just that piece, what's that piece worth? Well, if we look at Robert, that's worth a lot of millions of dollars. Right?
Yeah.
And being able to make a difference globally. That's pretty incredible. And have the family life you want, support your kids, everything you've been able to do. So it's worth a lot.
Yeah.
Right. And having the freedom to be able to pick and choose how you're going to impact people. So that's worth a lot.
Yeah.
But as far as the answer, why I would move from the top of one company or the top of one industry to another, it goes hand in hand with that, which is, for example, in real estate, I wanted to come in and build financial success early on. I was in my early 20s, and I came in and had achieved that, and it was really running, quite well. I was representing very big banks and selling their properties for them as well. So all kinds of things came in. And people would say that I was, at the height of my career, I was one of the
Right.
top people at one of the top companies in the nation. So by volume, I was doing
Congrats,
well.
by the way.
Thanks. But I got to a point where I was just like, you know what? Something in me isn't happy. And I learned very early on that it doesn't matter the cars, the house, the view, the clothes, whatever. That doesn't
The
matter.
trophies, the accolades, the pictures.
It doesn't matter. What it was, finding what was really going to make me happy.
Right.
Some people can make an extra $1,500 a month right now. I remember at a person that I worked with, she was cutting hair. She was allergic to the chemicals, and the dye and everything.
Right.
But she needed the money. Her and her husband had kids. And she's like, if I just made an extra $1,500 a month, that would change my life. And I said, we can do that.
Yep.
I helped her make an extra $1,500 a month. She quit. Her health got better. She was home with the kids. That's all that, it changed her life, right?
Yeah.
So it was, part of it is finding what truly is going to light you up and make you happy. And I had this moment of truth where I had all the stuff, but I wasn't fulfilled. And so I had the courage, thank goodness, by being blessed by God, I had the courage and the faith to say, you know what? I'm not going to just turn a blind eye in the fact that I'm not fulfilled. I'm going to go out and do something that's more fulfilling for me.
Right.
And I want to, where I want to help more people. And so I had enough confidence by that point in my early 20s. It didn't matter if I was at the top and I was starting something I knew nothing about. I knew through the grace of God and my faith that it was possible, right?
Yeah.
And so part of that answer is getting in touch with what's really going to drive you personally and make you happy. And it's never necessarily about the money. Yes, we get into things because we want to make money, but it's never really about the money,
You're
right?
right. You're totally right.
And so when you get into that deeper reasoning to what's going to fulfill you, and you get in touch with that, that will take you, right? So that's part of what took me. I'd get to the top of an industry and I'd be like, okay, I did that. Great. I picked up all these lessons and these experiences, but I'm not fulfilled in this way. So now I want to go to something else and challenge myself and get fulfilled in this way. So that became very evident to me. That getting in touch with that, not the money, but what's really truly going to fulfill you, and not having the self-talk, which is, oh, I don't need that. Everybody has a drive and a passion within them that if they can just get in touch with it, your purpose, is found by the intersection of your gifts and your passion. Nice. Right? That's where you find your purpose. And so if you can get in touch with, look at your unique gifts, that unique combination, and then also what's really going to fulfill you truly, and don't worry about how much money you're going to make, just what's going to fulfill. That's what had me, not being afraid to go from, industries that had nothing to do with each other.
Yeah. My thoughts always were, and maybe this is not a common thought. I think the older I get, the more weird I realize that I am. You know what I mean? Yeah, and I embrace that weirdness. I always tell people, I'm like Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer. And I always say it wrong because that's the way my young son said it when he first said it. He just, ran off the red-nosed name snare, And I just thought that, when he didn't fit in, then of course he ends up on Misfit Island and he gets to meet all the Misfit toys. You know what I mean? And I just think it's so unique when you learn to love who you're created to be. And it's not by accident, and it is on purpose. And you do have the uniqueness of your DNA, which is a uniqueness of your gift and your things that you can give others. And it's when people always ask me, I'm just always going, why did they never ask me? Like, what is the one thing that just juices you up over and over and over again? You know what I mean? It's like, why don't you pinpoint, why do you keep challenging yourself? Why do you keep moving from one arena to another? And it is a uniqueness of finding that gift of who you are and that you can do more. That I when you get around people, like I love people that are in the arts, right? Where they go, I won a Tony, so I need to figure out how to win a Grammy. And then I got to figure out how to win an Oscar.
Right.
And from my world, the automotive world, we know of a few individuals that said, well, I figured out how to ride go-kart and now I'm doing sprint cars and then I'm doing NASCAR. So why can't I do IndyCar? And there's a guy out there that a lot of people might not know named Tony Stewart. And, not only did he move to owning cars in the NASCAR arena, but then one guy invited him to go to NHRA, and that's drag racing. That's, there was 341 miles an hour. The record just was broke this weekend. And it was like, so he goes there and he's just going, man, this is awesome. Now, he's the only person on planet that went to the Indianapolis 500, raced for 500 miles, took third place, then ran in a golf cart to a helicopter that took him to an airport, jumped on a Learjet, flew to Daytona, landed in a helicopter, jumped in another race car, and drove this Coca-Cola 600. He did 1,100 miles and one day of racing, averaging, I forget what they said it was average, like 172 miles an hour for 1,100 miles. I mean, you know what I mean? And why would you challenge yourself to do something like that? Oh, and by the way, he placed in the top 5 in that race too. So he meets this girl, Leah Priet, and she's a professional drag racer for the fastest cars in the world. They fall in love, they get married, and now she all of a sudden goes, I don't want to do this anymore. And he goes, well, I bought your car. I bought your team. And she goes, you race. So so now Tony Stewart won a race already in alcohol, but now he's in the top few of the biggest ones. And that's the number one question people say is, why do you keep doing this? And he's going, I don't know how to do anything else.
Interesting.
I don't know how to do anything else but find stuff that I know nothing about, learn about it, get in it, support everyone I can, and then get involved with it. It's like, that's who I am.
Yeah, I can relate. Well, let me ask you real quick.
Sure.
So you've gotten to the point in your career where you don't need to be doing much of anything.
Right.
I mean, you could be just going on quiet walks every day, right? Or bowling or whatever.
I definitely would be bored out of my mind. That's for damn sure.
And now you're doing unlimited wisdom and you're going to be reaching, I believe millions and millions of people and impacting their lives. Like,
Agree with
same
you.
for you. What is it for you?
Yeah, it's a quick story. Got the accolades, all of this crazy stuff, and just did it company after company. And again, like you, it got to the point where my sons were old enough where now I just get to guide and help them. They're on their own journey, got wives, got kids, and all of a sudden I'm like an empty nester, and I'm like all of a sudden going like, boy, I gotta find something else I need to be happy about. And I started giving to charities. I just felt, I'm gonna do this. And it's funny, my accountant was going, I go, every year you say to me that if I don't buy some stuff that's business oriented, that it's gonna go to the government. And I just said to him, I talked to this guy. He said, how much can I write off on my taxes, my business taxes for charity? And he goes, you can write off 44%. So imagine making the amount of money that makes you so comfortable. And then you meet somebody that says, we'll figure out how to live on half of what you already make. And so that made me get around other people. And the guy that really changed this for me was Bill Austin. And this guy's door to door selling hearing aids. And then he goes from working for the number one company. Then he ends up being part owner. Then he buys it from him. And that's Starkey Hearing. And then he starts Starkey Hearing Foundation. And he wanted to make this deal like a lot of companies are doing mindfulness now, is that for all the hearing aids he sells at retail, largest in the world, why wouldn't he take some of that money and make sure that children hear for the first time in their life?
Good for
And
him.
and all of a sudden he started saying, listen, I want to travel all over the world and fit children with hearing aids. And so you really get to know how good you can pinpoint your story, because I don't know if I shared this with you, Jeff, but he said to me, and I was in an audience, and he says, how many of you have ever been in a situation where you're by yourself and you're walking to someplace, and then all of a sudden you heard something, dog tags, the mind gets going, you know what I mean? And then you're walking at a little faster pace, but you still hear it. And maybe it's even getting louder or closer. So he's smiling and it's like, we all know how powerful the mind is. And now you're in a wide open run. You know what I mean? You couldn't be running any faster. And you get to the door and you're knocking on the door. If it's your house, you're opening it up and you're running in, and you look behind you and there's nothing. And he asked everyone in this audience of a couple thousand people, has anyone ever experienced that? And everyone raised their hand, and we're also laughing because we're all sort of imagining being in this place. And then he lowered his voice and he goes, ah, he goes, this is what deaf kids feel like 24 hours a day.
Wow. Wow.
I'm going like, so I'm like, I'm all choked up. And then he turns around and says, listen, for every dollar that you donate, I think it was $32 can fit a hit kid with hearing aids that gets to hear laughter for the first time, gets to hear his mom say, I love you, and doesn't have this worried thing about I'm hearing something that's going to get me or I'm missing something. And he said, so for every dollar that you give, I'll match it by 5.
Wow.
And I remember uh, writing a very large check and walked up and give it to him. And when I did that, he asked me to come on stage. And I just thought, wow, this is the first time I've ever gotten a standing ovation for me not doing what I normally do, me
Right.
doing something for someone else, flat out addicted. It was like, wow, I can just point to somebody else and give them money because they were called to do that, and I get to be a part of it. So then I started collecting trophies and accolades for giving money, and I'm always wrapped around children. You know what I mean? I was an orphan and grew up in foster homes, and so I know what it means to have someone actually not abandon you. And so that's when all of a sudden my goals changed in a hurry. And Bill even helped me with this. He said, Robert, from now on, set your goals on the amount that you're going to give instead of your income.
Wow.
Paradigm shift. Then everything went to the next level. And because I'm not the kind, I always tell people, Jeff, and I don't know how you feel about this, but Bill Gates and the Elon Musk of the world have their own gifts that I don't have. What I mean by that is I get to 2 million a year or 4 million a year. My goal is not to create a company that does 100 million a year. I don't have any desire. I'm not called to do that. That's not my purpose, not my passion. But building organizations so I can give more to charity, yeah. It's weird. And so even this last company that I built, I think I told you this, I wouldn't have done this if my wife didn't say to me, listen, honey, would you help me build this business? I go, I'll help you build your little business. Because when I got back in the industry, everyone was mad at me because they reached out to me and go, why didn't you tell me you were looking? Why didn't you tell me you were looking? And I said, you talked to the wrong person. I'm not looking. If you could have got to my wife where she felt like she wanted to make her own money to give to animals. That's what makes her happy, is rescuing and helping animals. So she didn't want to dig into our nest egg. You know what I mean? And thank you for asking me that. Yeah, I didn't expect that. I was interviewing you.
Well, no, it was great because you basically had identified what was going to fulfill you, having achieved all the years of success and what everyone strives for, and
Right.
then you got in touch with what was going to be fulfilling for you.
Yeah, and it inspired my entire family when I did that. It's like when I really talk to my sons, even though they always tell me how proud they are of me, what I used to do and still do on the side for my wife is something that never, ever, ever um, made them want to go, that's what I want to learn. And now that we're older and we can talk, and my youngest is 30 years old, it really blew me away that they would tell me, Dad, do you know how many companies you've built and how many people you made a lot of money? And then they in return, like basically made stupid decisions and kicked you to the curb. And I couldn't see it from their perspective. See,
Right.
I'm looking at the lifestyle, the cash flow, all the stuff that I've been able to do with my kids and let them see the world and support them in every way. But they kept seeing this industry is not good. And because they have no experience, they don't know that happens in every industry.
Right. Right.
Because if they would have gotten anything, there's always the bean counter. I think they call that the chief CFO, the chief financial officer, that goes down and sits down with the other board members and goes, you guys got to explain to me why we're paying Jeff Carlisle this amount of money.
Right.
Because if the CFO has to cut checks to people that are in the field that are larger than his or her check, there's something wrong. There's something wrong. And so this stuff needs to be changed. And sometimes the people that started the company used to be in the field of another company and they just forgot.
Right.
They just forgot. They start believing in their own press.
Right.
Well, so Jeff, I'll give you the last word. I want everyone to or if we want to cover something else, just be open to that. But I want people to know that, where can they plug into you? Where can they see what you're offering today? Uh, um, and how can they reach out to you? And if they want to, you know, get these pieces that they know what that could take them to their next level in every area of their life. I'm telling you guys right now, the Jeff is not a one facet individual. You know what I mean? He is very, very well balanced. And so I think that comes with wisdom and age as well. So please tell people how to get a hold of you and anything else you would like to add.
Thanks for that. The one thing that I would like to add right before that is the second part of what I would ask me
Oh,
is how, and it relates to everything you've accomplished and how you've helped people. It's, well, how does it happen? How can you go into this industry and then rise to the top, or this company, right? And then rise to the top and
right.
then go into a completely different situation, different environment, different requirements, different skills, different this. How does that happen? How do you go into all these different channels and
Yeah.
arenas and rise to the top, because you've done it over and over and over and over again? And the short answer for me on that is what we've been talking about, but a really short answer is when we align, whether people believe in God or not,
Right.
most people are aware in basic physics and how the world works that there are forces, right,
Right.
that are holding the atom together that keep everything happening. Well, when you go and you look at how that all works, and I've spent over 30 years studying in quantum physics and consciousness and everything else, when you look at that, we are interacting with what we understand to be reality, which is the quantum field, right?
Right.
We're interacting. We're having some impact on what's happening in our lives. And when you understand the simple truths or the simple principles of how that all works, right? And there was this guy named Jesus that kind of taught those principles. But when you understand that at higher levels of consciousness, you get different results, you get different outcomes. And at higher levels of consciousness, meaning when you can break out of judgment, either of others or self-judgment,
Right.
and move into gratitude, when you can shift out of fear, right, and move more into joy, which is what you exemplify every day. When you can shift out of pain and move into more of a freedom,
Right.
who you really are, not stuck by the pain. And when you could shift out of ego and move into purpose, when you make those shifts into these higher levels of consciousness, you align with the way the universe works in a much more powerful way, because what you're being ends up being what you experience.
Right.
And so when you were able to make those shifts and you get into that alignment, it's like everything starts working for you.
Yeah, it's like you're the luckiest person in the world.
Yeah, and it's like in that consciousness, in that space, which most of us have touched it. Some of us have lived through it, and some of us learned to live in it, right? And
Yeah.
it's like when you're in that place, you don't necessarily need to know how it's going to happen.
Right.
How unfolds before you. The how's not, I always say the how's not up to you. That's up to God.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
When you get in this part, you're in trouble.
Yeah. You can control this. You can control the alignment, who you're being, the state of consciousness within you. And when you do that and you move up to these higher states, synchronistically, everything seems to fall into place and unfold in ways that we could never, ever organize. We could never, ever figure out how to do that. That is so far, the amount of variables, statistically speaking, that would have to fall into place in alignment to get that thing to happen. It's just, there's no way we could do it.
Right.
So part of what you teach with the imaginator and the imagination is fundamental to that alignment.
Yes.
Right? Like you can't align to something that you don't know. If you don't have a target of what you're aligning to, you can't align to it. So what you're teaching is so critical. And so part of what I've been really helping people through is I've been given, I didn't sit down and try to design things, but I've been given in moments of inspiration, we'll call it divine inspiration or whatever. I've been giving different processes or different programs that when people go through them, it's not just information, it actually is causing shifts. And I can't take any credit for it, because I didn't sit down to design it, I didn't come up with it, it came through me. But when they're going through these videos and they're going through these things, they're shifting out of the judgment, the fear, and the pain and the ego, and they're moving into these higher states. And then crazy, unexplainable results are happening, right?
For you and I, we call those miracles.
Miracles, right? But where people would never have thought that was possible for them in their life, and they've been living stuck in a certain way for their whole life, some 60, 70 years, and then all of a sudden something happens and they're no longer stuck. Right. So that would be the key message for me that I really felt was important, that I know you do naturally, which is, when you move to do something, when you get in touch with what really is going to fulfill you, which is so fundamental, you don't need to know how it's going to work or how you're going to do it.
You know it's going to work.
Right.
You know the things are going to come to you, and you allow them to happen.
Absolutely. And that's where people get stuck, is like they try to figure out and see the path and see all the variables and see how they're going to do it. And if they can't see it, they don't do it.
Right.
They don't take a step. And it's the opposite.
So like when someone says, lean not on your own understanding.
Absolutely.
Then what do I lean on? I tell people all the time that are bold enough to ask me, is I go, the reason that I'm so successful is I'm a co-pilot. I've learned
Right.
I've learned to be okay when I heard the phrase, uh, um, trade your expectations for appreciation. Because we're taught that we got expectations on everything. And unfortunately, all the biggest expectations we have are things that are out of our control. So I really understand why people are miserable and stuck and unhappy. And why does this happen? And why does this happen? Because with their relationships personally, maybe even their relationship with God and Jesus, their relationship with their job, their everything, they just have really unrealistic expectations. And so people don't even want to give to somebody because if they do, they expect something in return.
Right.
And that expectation is never what you dreamed it to be.
Right.
So now you're pissed off at everybody. Why don't this person do this? Why isn't this person do this? What's wrong with this person? What's wrong with the government? Why does God, kill children? You know what I mean? And it's like, dude, man, come on. Which I resemble that remark years ago. You know what I mean? Before I met my mentors, I was the kid that was dyslexic, that, went to a special class that they just pushed me through school. And only a couple of people told me I could do something. And just because it was a couple, I decided to do that thing. You're good with your hands. You should be a mechanic. Really? No one's ever said I could do anything. So I guess I'll do that. And encouraging and giving encouragement to people is pretty powerful. So I'm glad that you shared that part, because that was an important part for people. I just know that you have evidence. You have evidence of helping people get to whatever level that they're desiring. And when you find someone that can do that, you know what I mean? I know that I have learned from you in our reconnection together, and you and I continue to bounce things off each other, and we just keep elevating each other's. Oh, I was sort of thinking this how it works, but that is the way it works, and I just got chicken skin. So, so yeah, please tell people where to go and what you have available, what offers that you have.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. It's been interesting because as these programs came to me over the years, I just started to put people I knew through them, and they started having these massive shifts immediately. And then they started telling their friends who told their friends. And I've never really promoted myself ever.
Wow.
Yeah, it's literally, even though I have online marketing background, to this point, it's all been word of mouth. And I have people in countries all over the world just through word of mouth. I just now put up a web page for
Wow.
one of the
You.
for one
I'm
of the
proud of you,
programs.
Jeff. I'm proud of you.
Well, I figured I'm to the point now where I'm going to start putting them out into the public. There's a little window where I'm still going to be available to actually be the coach. And then I'm currently having other clients that I've trained or have experience in things start to learn how to run my program. So there's still
Very good. Very good.
window for me, and then I'm going to hand it off so I can go do the other bigger stuff that fits into this that I
Sure.
want to put together. So now currently the most impactful for someone who, whether you've worked on yourself or haven't done anything at all, doesn't matter. And especially in any business you're wanting to do, anything you're wanting to achieve, I feel like that belief factor, being able to get into that state where no matter what your eyes are seeing, you're not getting thrown by it. You're able to hold the belief
Wow.
in that state of consciousness and then keep it long enough to allow things to unfold for you, allow the how to show up. 36 years in the making, that piece by piece, through my own experience and the research and everything else, I finally got the last piece of that process that once I did it, I started running some past clients through it over the last couple of years before I was going to put it out. track their results, track the immediate results, the long-term results, the relationships, their money, their this, their that. And now, now I've seen what's happened, which is what I do with everything first.
Sure.
And so I just put up the webpage and people can go through that. It's the first part of a bigger program. And as they go through it, they're going to have these massive shifts. Well, that webpage is theprocess.vip. So www.theprocess.vip. That's going to be part of a bigger site that I'm building out now, where I'm going to obviously put a lot more that I have to bring to the table into that site.
Sure.
So that's available now. I'm still the one doing the guiding it and the Q&A and the insights on it for a short time, and then I'll have someone take that over. So that's where that would be what I would say is probably at any level of business or personal that you're doing, would be a very simple, non-intense, amazing way to have these shifts and break out and see the bridges that you don't see. And then I have other programs that are designed to go heal past trauma, which I didn't, again, sit down to do those, but they help heal past trauma,
Sure.
release patterns from the past, help you basically, as my clients say, shatter your old identity. So I have 7 different programs for this kind of things that all address different aspects around consciousness.
Very cool.
And if people want to get a hold of me, whether it's for private coaching, which I'm still, a small window that I'll be available, then I'm not going to be doing that anymore either. They could reach out to me at my email address, which is very simple. It's jc@jeffcarlisle.biz. It's JEFFCARLISLE.biz. So it's JC.
And I'll make sure to post that information below here in this video when we upload it.
Thanks. I appreciate that. But yeah, just to kind of finalize that, when I heard what you were hitting on with what you're doing with Unlimited Wisdom and with the Imaginator, and I was like, of course Robert would know that, right? Of course. And I think it's so brilliant and so awesome that you're sharing everything that you're sharing, because you don't have to.
Right.
And the fact
I feel I have to.
Which is fantastic. You're driven by purpose, but for somebody to be able to have the access to you and have access to what what you've learned, not just in the blueprint of how to create massive success at any level they want to have, but also the insights, the wisdom, everything that you've gleaned over all these incredible experiences. I mean, it's worth millions and millions and millions and triple digits of millions of dollars. And people who may be familiar with you, just like friends, the closer you get to someone, the less they listen. It's like people that may be familiar with you probably don't really understand the value they have of having access to you. I've experienced that, in my life, where people that get close.
It's human nature. It really is.
Yeah. Right. But I just want everyone to know the value that they have, and having access to you is immense. And whether they're out to build a business or whether they're out to just kind of create the life that they want most, I mean, to have access to you is fantastic. And I'm very grateful that you would even, not only have the conversations we're having, but also invite me on to have these conversations.
Well, that I have my imaginary friend. Some people get turned off when you can say God or Jesus. I just ask all of you that, as bold as Jeff and I have been, based on our belief, boldness is part of that. Boldness is confidence. Boldness is, you guys will always notice that if Jeff and I were worried about people that seen this video are going to think less of us, we have killed that monster years ago.
Well said.
Yeah. And so for those of you that still are offended by that, why don't you ask yourself why? Because I tell people all the time when I was a little kid, if I wanted to be a cowboy or a fireman, and everybody asked me what I wanted to be, and I said I was a fireman, for whatever reason, when I was young, everyone thought it was cute. And they were encouraging and they were saying, yes, you can, yes, you can. And I just don't know why the older we get, the more people want to beat our beliefs out of us. They want to beat our imagination out of us. It doesn't make a difference what you choose to do in life. Everybody wants to say that you're not enough, that you're not worthy, that you don't know what you're talking about. And in the midst of all that noise and distraction, it's always neat to find people like Jeff Carlisle. I'm being serious. I
I
told him
appreciate
straight out that, sometimes being connected and hardwired makes you feel very alone. And
it.
it makes you feel very alone until you run into someone that's also hardwired. So,
Right.
Jeff, getting to know you and for who you are today, I respected you in the past, but I respect you more now than ever.
Wow, thank you. That means the world.
Well, thank you very much. So you still have the last word unless we're done.
Well, last word. If Robert's not the perfect example, I don't know who is. What is possible for your life, even if you want to say that it doesn't matter. Well, if you say it doesn't matter, that's not important to you, whether it's more financial success or more freedom or whatever it is, that just means that you have not yet looked and gotten in touch with what is most important to you, right? What will light you up? Because once you find that, then everything changes. And
Yeah,
so once you find that, then the next step is to be able to see past what you believe is possible and take that leap of faith and take that step.
I agree. I where I find people and I talk about how they're connected in their imagination, I have yet to meet a person that I wasn't able to take them back and get them to experience a place where they not only had imagination, but they were hardwired. I have not met a person that I couldn't talk to and they go, hey, this is the way I felt when I was hardwired. This is what I believed. This is what could happen. And it could be, I'll give you a quick one. In my imagination course that I do, I had a girl that told me that her grandma was one of the people that she was the only granddaughter. And so she said there wasn't anything that she was missing that Barbie didn't have. And she said, because I was Barbie's friend, Barbie could do, and Barbie could have anything she wanted.
That's
And she
great.
said, I didn't have the knowledge at that time that was my grandma fulfilling what I wanted. And of course she was buying it from the store. But it was miraculous to me as a little girl that if she needed the convertible, if she needed the home, if she needed Ken and some other guys in her life, they just bam, they just shot.
Right.
And she says, I was just Barbie's friend and got to experience all this stuff. And she says, it's time that I start thinking like that now. And I went, damn, that's good. Especially after we know that, the imagination that the new Barbie movie did for people.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, Jeff, I appreciate you. I know you're a busy man for you to take the time to jump on here. Again, people that know me really well know I wouldn't promote anyone that I didn't believe in. So,
Well, thank you very much.
please go check it out. If you have some questions, Jeff is the kind of person that will set a time with you, help you answer those questions. And man, I just know that it's going to be if I haven't been able to use my voice, my experience, and my hardwire to get you to the next step, maybe Jeff could. Can
Well,
you?
yeah, and I appreciate that. And I believe you and I both know the same things. And again, to your point, it's just, saying things a different way sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it's again, because of the way you and I are uniquely created by the God we believe, we have different DNA. And I know that Jeff will find people that he maybe wasn't being able to connect or shift. And
Absolutely.
if we all build a community of people that you're not hearing it from me, hear it from this person. And
Right.
and that's the way I always have. I know you're a lifetime learner as well.
Absolutely.
All right, Jeff, I love it. I appreciate you. Have a great, great, great day. Make sure you guys reach out. Some of you are going to regret, procrastinating like on a lot of stuff that we do. And then you find out that Jeff has somebody else doing it, because Jeff has some big imagination of his own. So both Jeff and I know that the way to greatness is the service of many. And maybe one tweak that I can help you with is when you realize that the world's really a people business. Uh, that's when magic really happens. So thanks, Jeff. I really appreciate you.
No, I appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
You bet. God bless you forever. See you soon.
You as well. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.